young men of color who are stepping into an academic institution, what I really think they at first need to be aware of is how they are going to be perceived. And, you know, they have to be very careful not to own those perceptions of themselves, either from other students, and particularly from the faculty. You can't own it, because if you do, it will only serve to break you down. You have to find ways to deal with it, and you have to find the resources, and you have to have the fortitude to realize that some of what's coming at you has nothing to do with you. So, don't own it.
You know, um, coming here to this country when I was younger, and then going through the school system in New York City, and then moving on. I know in Binghamton, perhaps, the EOP program, the City Educational Opportunity Program, was my intervention, if you want to call it that, to prepare me to, to be successful in all those different things.
Education was always something that I was taught was the most important thing, and so my parents were very, very adamant about me getting as much education as possible. So even before I got to the stage where I was going to college or anything, there was a lot of prep work that was done. So I went through a number of programs that helped me, I guess I could say, to get an advantage over people. Not say I wasn't smart or adequate, but just give me a little leg up. I went to school during the school year with just the regular classes and all that stuff, but then I went to Upward Bound for the summer, for 6 weeks out of the summer. And so it taught me to condition myself to do a number of things that I probably wouldn't normally do, or to think in a way that I really wasn't used to thinking, because just as you said, you came into this environment where there were a lot of older white women that were much different from you. I went to Swarthmore, and there were a lot of older professors who were very, very, very different from where I grew up deep in the heart of Chester. So it's taking advantage of all those opportunities that are available and using them to your full extent.
Entering the school of nursing, their undergrad at Binghamton was kind of a sort of an eye-opener in a sense that it was somewhat different. It's different and very different, and something that I wasn't really looking forward to or was expecting. I can't say anything because I might be, they may look at me as if I'm stupid or something like that. So I understand somewhat, silencing myself because of that fear of feeling that, you're not the same, basically. How I got over that, I'm still working on it, but I've tried several things, and I've tried the don't care attitude. I'm gonna get my participation credit any which way possible, and I'll say whatever I have to say and then sit back. So I think more or less I am completely echoing what you said earlier on, but how I dealt with it was to build a shield around me, like this don't care attitude, and just go and say what I need to say as long as it's out.
If you don't have a sense of who you are as a person of color and as a man of color stepping on that campus at that time, you're going to have some problems.
But a lot of times people walk into a campus and they look for people that are similar to them or act similar to them.
Sure.
And so the caution there is to identify people that resemble you, but not necessarily because of your color, or because of the things that they like, but people who resemble you in terms of what your goals are while you're there. That's one of the biggest things that I've noticed from my experience, is that coming from an all-white school, or predominantly white school, when I do see other people, other men of color, or women of color for that matter, they tend to cluster around one another because they're familiar with one another, and that's great. It's great to have that familiarity. But what happens when you're the person that's really there for your education, they're there kind of goofing off or whatnot, and doing whatever they want to do, just because this is the college experience that they want to have, not to get sucked into that. And a prime example of that is when people go into pledging fraternities and sororities. Be cautious. Be very, very cautious. I walked away from a fraternity 2 days before I could have crossed because they didn't value what I valued. Dad was doing all kinds of silly stuff and whatnot. I was the only person that had above a 3.0 GPA in that experience. Everyone else was a 1, 2 to a 2 something. Like, if I keep hanging around with you guys, yeah, I'll look cool. And I'll have my letters and I'll walk around campus. It'll be the first black fraternity on our campus, but what can I really say about my experience? What will I have gotten out of this?
Being part of the EOP program, where it's predominantly persons of color, and how we form a support group. And you're absolutely right. Within that whole body, you have some students who they wanted to do this, and the Friday night parties were their thing, you know, and stuff like that. And you have the other students who, you know, really wanted to excel and really wanted to do well. When I entered the School of Nursing, in fact, and again, being that the program was predominantly white, I was the only black dude in my entire program, and everyone else, you have one or two, 3 or 4 maybe African American women. We all teamed up as a group and made sure that we were studying, made sure that we were up early in the morning to get to our clinicals on time. We were a support system for each other, which is important at the undergraduate level. With other students who were in the program, African American students who were in the program with me, we all helped each other collectively as a group. So at graduation day, when all of us walked at graduation, it was pride and joy and everything to see that we all entered the program, we all finished together. And that's the part that I think that's important, is that piece of working together as a group and finding a support system within that small community itself.
I didn't have a choice, because not making it was not an option for me. Because I quickly realized that from my experience growing up the way in which I did, my education was my way out. It was my goal, my key to advancement. And I had a certain level of determination that was helpful. I had an incredibly supportive grandmother that I did not want to fail. I found some supportive people along the way that believed that I could. Yeah, it was a combination of all of those things, and the fact that in my mind, failure wasn't an option.
I think one of you guys mentioned something about faculty, and you know, I had the privilege of, when I was in Binghamton, you know, I took courses outside of the School of Nursing, and I had a lot of faculty of color who were my mentors that got me through. And if I needed something, if I needed my uniforms that semester or a stethoscope or whatever, took care of me and made sure I had everything. So I couldn't let them down either. I really had to finish my program.
Mm-hmm. Something you said when you said let them down, because two things. I have nieces and nephews, and so there was times where I knew I had to finish for them. Like, they had to see me graduate, because I knew that if they were ever going to get to college or fun, they could make it. I could not fail them. And even in times where I said I could give this up, I could get a job doing something else, go back to the military. I knew that my niece and nephew knew they had an uncle in college, and that I had to graduate for them. And then I remember seeing, so it was important that they saw me graduate. So I was connected to sort of a bigger goal. But that helped me finish and continue on.
But the whole theme of the fact that I don't think any of us went to school just for ourselves. I mean, historically speaking, you know, you think about the fact that we were given opportunities that our grandparents didn't necessarily have. At least I'll speak for mine, they didn't necessarily have. You know, I never felt as if I was going to school just for myself, you know, on a day of graduation with, 20 plus family members there, my nephews, my nieces, 2 of whom you've known. Well, one has gone on to finish his degree and one will graduate in May. You walk out the arena and there are these people that believe in you, and you hand your degree to the person that also you felt it belonged to. For me, again, it was my grandmother. I handed it to her. It belonged to her. And to the day she died, it hung in her house.